Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. As preppers, we have to get a lot of different kinds of things, and many times those just end up sitting on a shelf, not being used for months or years at a time. And yeah, we all know that there are certain types of gear that we're supposed to practice with, but other things, like LED lanterns and stuff, you don't really have to practice with those. Those just end up gathering dust until they're needed, but there are some preps out there that actually can get a whole lot of daily use as well. So today we're going to go over some preps that I would gladly buy again if I had to. These are things that maybe if I don't use them every day, I at least get some sort of seasonal use out of them besides just for emergency preparedness. First up, we have the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, which is my current EDC folder. I've been into knives since I was in high school. I've been collecting them. I've got to try different things. And after having gone through all that, I think that this one is probably the best folding knife that I have at actually being a knife. Other ones, like my Swiss Army knives, they're good at being little mobile tool sets. Have other knives that are really good at looking cool, but maybe they don't cut as well as this one would. And aside from just being able to cut extremely well, it's also very fidgety. There's a lot of different ways that you can open and close this. Like that was the Spidey flick. You can do thumb flick. You can press the compression lock and open it that way. So gives me something to do when I'm bored. I mean, people might be like, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing that, but I do it because it's fun. Now, the blade is made of S45 VN steel. It's considered a super steel, but what's nice about it is that it's actually not as difficult to sharpen as others. And some of that probably has to do with how simple the blade shape is on this. I have a ZT350 that uses S30V, and it's a bit of a recurve, so it's not nearly as easy to sharpen as this one is. And this thing can get screaming sharp. I mean, it'll shave hair off your arm and you barely even feel it as it's doing that. Now, a couple of downsides to this knife. First of all, the tip is very, very delicate. That makes it good for precision work, but it also makes it very easy to break off if you use it for prying or other tasks that maybe you should use something else for. Also, it is a bit, it's not heavy at all, but it does have quite a footprint that it leaves in your pocket. The handle is very long, makes it very comfortable, but it's also a bit cumbersome in your pocket. I like to carry my folding knives with the clips here in my key pocket, and right now the G10 has kind of rubbed a bit of a hole in my pants. So I'm not thrilled about that, but overall this thing, it cuts extremely well. It's a very well built knife, but another downside is it is a little bit pricey. So if you're looking for something that maybe isn't as much as this, something like a Kershaw Cryo would be a good option. I've used one of those in the past. Spyderco Tenacious is probably another good one. And then maybe a Cold Steel Mini Recon. Stuff like that would give you a good, reliable folding knife and maybe a little bit of a less expensive package than this. Now, when it comes to multi-tools, one that I would definitely buy again is the Victorinox Swiss Tool X. This has been my multi-tool for years now. I keep it in my EDC bag sort of as a heavier duty complement to the Swiss Army knife that I keep in my pocket. And like other multi-tools, it has a good variety of implements. Like it has Phillips driver, has a couple of different sizes of flatheads, has knife blade, saw, the Swiss Tool X, which is what this is, comes with scissors. And one thing I like about it versus other multi-tools like Leatherman's is that all of the tools are accessible without having to open the pliers. Like if I want the awl, I just pull it out. And then also when I did that, you may have noticed that when I take one tool out, the others stay put. Some other multi-tools, when you take one tool out, a bunch of them clump and you have to fight those back in before you can actually use the tool that you wanted. And the reason why the Swiss tool doesn't have that problem is because each individual tool has its own little leaf spring or back spring, and that really helps cut down on that. So it's just sort of a refinement over other multi-tools. Now, directly comparing a Swiss tool to a Leatherman Wave may not be 100% fair because size-wise, this is going to be a little bit more in line with a super tool than a Wave. But there are some universal things that are differences, like the steel. This is going to be more corrosion resistant than a wave will be. But one area that you may not like the Swiss tool is the fact that there aren't any one-handed opening blades or implements. So on a wave, you can get to a couple of different blades one-handed, which is nice. A couple of Swiss tool models do have that, but I think they might be a little bit more expensive, and just the regular common ones don't have that. So if that's something that's important to you, then keep that in mind. But when it comes to fixed blade survival type knives, I generally stick to those made by K-Bar Becker. And the reason why is these are all just very good, reliable, full tang knives. They're going to be durable, they're going to hold up well to different kinds of abuse, especially in more of a backcountry setting where you're trying to do things like process wood, stuff like that. And another good thing about the Beckers is that the handles are comfortable on them. This is a BK7 and it has the larger handle size, but you can hold it a lot of different ways, feels like it belongs in your hand. And then the same thing can be said about their smaller knives. Like this one is a BK16. It's considered, I think, a tweener is what they're called, the smaller Becker knives. But handles on both sizes are just super comfortable, very nice to hold. And another thing I like about these is that while they're not cheap, like most Beckers are in probably like the $120 range, they are a good balance of price and performance. They're not the most expensive ones out there, they're not the cheapest, but they do a really good job. Now, one thing that you kind of sacrifice with that less expensive price point compared to something like some Essie knives is that the sheath that it comes with a lot of times isn't the nicest. Like this is the stock sheath for the BK7, and it's just, you know, kind of a nylon thing with a plastic insert. Not the best. I mean, it's not terrible, but I have upgraded some of them. Like I have a Kydex for this BK16, and then I also have a Kydex for my BK2. That you don't have to do that, but I did just because the ones that they come with are a little bit gangly. They're a little bit maybe bigger than what they need to be. Now, one problem that I did have with the sheath from the BK2 is I think it was actually dulling the knife. So if you get a BK2 with just that standard sheath, that is probably something that you will want to upgrade from a usability standpoint. Now, between the ones that I have here, I kind of use them for different purposes. Like this BK7, I've used it actually for a lot of yard work, cleaning things up, tearing, you know, trees and just wood that's fallen in the yard, tearing it down and stuff. And this BK16, it's on the wall of destiny most of the time, but this is very good for like making kindling, you know, starting fires, stuff like that. It's very, very good at carving and also food prep as well. It has a full flat grind blade like the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 does, so this cuts exceptionally well. Now, the BK2 is my bruiser, as you can see, has a very, very, very thick spine, and I keep that in my EDC bag as a complement to my Paramilitary 2, because if I want something that can do finer work, more precision stuff, or just daily cutting tasks, I'm going to go with my folder. But if I need a bruiser that can take some abuse that Paramilitary 2 cannot, then I have the BK2. But when it comes to taking care of all these different kind of tools, one thing that I've absolutely grown to love has been the Spyderco Sharp Maker. I got this a couple of years ago for my birthday, and it does a very good job of keeping knives that already have a decent edge on them, basically shaving sharp. There's been 2 different instances that I can think of where I pulled out a knife to do something, and people were just like, "Oh my Lance, what do you use to sharpen that?" And I tell them, and then they are on their phone trying to figure out, you know, how they can get one for themselves. It just works extremely well. And when you get the set, it comes with a set of medium stones and a set of fine stones. But one thing that it kind of struggles with is reprofiling blades or sharpening knives that really have taken a beating. And that's where sharpening rods like these cubic boron nitrides come in handy. You can also get diamond stones that'll do a lot of the same thing. I had a ZT350. I don't know if I messed it up freehand sharpening, or maybe the angle was a little bit off from the factory. I don't know, but I could not get it sharpened with the stones that it came with. But after just a few minutes with these, I mean, the angles were established, it was getting sharp, and I was able to finish it off with these, and it's back to shaving again. So those really do a good job. You can also get diamond stones, or if you want to go the other way and you want to get some ultra fine stones to kind of be an upgrade from these or be an extra step after these, then you can do that as well. Then another prep I've gotten a ton of use out of has been my Vertex Ready Pack. Now, to be fair, I didn't actually buy this. It was sent to me almost 3 years ago so that I could do a video over it, but I really have been using it, I mean, not daily, but pretty darn close for nearly 3 years. I'll use this a lot if I have to work away from home, since I primarily do work at home. During the summer, my wife and kid were at home, and getting work done can be a little bit difficult in that environment because my child is very energetic, so I'd have to go hide places and work, and I would take this with me, you know, go work different places, and it, you know, holds my laptop, all the different things that I need, including a mess ton of different kinds of survival gear, including that BK2 that I mentioned earlier. Now, some cool things about this bag. First of all, it's low profile in a lot of different ways. First off, it blends in visually. It doesn't stick out at all. And then also, it's very compact. It holds a lot of stuff, but it sucks in. It's not like this big gangly bulky thing that, you know, you get caught on stuff as you're walking around. And then also it has special compartments for things like a ballistic panel, and then also you can add like Velcro concealed carry holsters to it so that if you want to do that, you can. Normally I carry on body, but having the ability to stick it in a backpack if necessary is pretty nice as well. Next up, we have books, and this is one area that I've actually invested quite a bit in. The books that you see right there behind me on the shelf, that is a very small portion of all of the books that make up my prepper library. For example, I have the entire Foxfire book series, or at least the main core books and a couple of extras. That's basically the entire anthology of Appalachian knowledge. It's sort of like an apocalyptic encyclopedia set. Then I got just general preparedness books, things like Prepper's Long-Term Survival Guide, How to Survive the Underworld as We Know It. Also have books over gardening, different repair books, and then also have the Audubon field guides for plant and animal identification. But out of all of those books, probably my favorite author is Jim Cobb. I've talked about him on the channel before. I've actually conversed with him by email, which is cool because I was a fan of his long before I started the channel. But what I like about his books are that they're well written in a way that is easy for the average person to understand. If you were a brand new prepper, didn't have a blooming clue what in the world any of this was, you could read one of his books and actually get something out of it. Some of the others by other folks are written in a way that will totally overwhelm you. His stuff isn't that way, and he's got books over different topics like prepper's home defense, survival hacks, complete guide for disaster readiness. But he's recently come out with a new book that is Prepper's Long-Term Survival Countdown to Preparedness. And his publisher actually did send this to me. I bought all these other books over here, but this is one that they sent me to take a look at, and like all of his other books, I really like this one too. This is a 52-week course to go from no sort of preparedness at all to being pretty capable of handling almost anything that comes your way. It covers all the important things that you need to know, things like food, water, radios, situational awareness, just tons of different topics. I mean, each chapter is a week. So, I mean, you have, like 52 chapters plus a couple of extras. But I would recommend this to anybody that I know who's just getting started into preparedness, or even somebody like, me or a lot of you that have been doing it for a while, because I'm fairly sure that if, you go through this, you're probably going to find something that you hadn't thought of, or something that you can improve upon. I know that I have, as I've gone through it. I'm not afraid to admit it. And if you want to check this out, then be sure to use the link in the description below. Then another prep I would gladly buy again, especially with fall and winter coming up, is the Mr. Heater Buddy Heater. I've been using these things ever since I was a kid for things like hunting, camping, power outages. Back in the early days of the channel, when I used to film out in my shop, I would film out there when, good grief, it was like, I think, less than 30 degrees in the shop, and this thing would warm it up to 60 within, just like, maybe 10 minutes or so. So these are very good to have for a lot of different situations, and also they are fairly safe. Of course, you do have to be careful. You can't be a complete idiot with them when you're using them. Like, heat can cause fire, so don't keep paper or fabric it right in front of it and stuff like that. And also don't use it in an enclosed space where you don't, especially where you don't have like a carbon monoxide detector. This does have a low oxygen shutoff, but don't totally depend on that. Be smart, have ventilation, have a carbon monoxide detector, and you should be fine. And one nice thing about these is that they can use either 1-pound propane bottles, they can use the disposables, or you can also use the refillable 1-pound propane bottles with these. And then also you can hook them up to larger cylinders using an adapter hose. So there's a lot of different situations where these come in handy, and you have a few different options for how to keep them running. Then another thing I buy again are these Baofeng UV 5G Plus GMRS radios. And what I like about these is that you can use them pretty much the same way that you would just normal little bubble pack walkie-talkies that you buy at Walmart or any like sporting goods store. Like my kid, he has some radios, just little kiddie ones, and since they use the same frequencies, we can all use them together. These, of course, have a lot more power since they're considered GMRS radios. Like this, I think the handheld can go up to 5 watts. If you have a mobile setup or a base station, it can go up to 50, whereas little FRS radios, I think, are limited to like 0.2 watts. I could be wrong about that. If I am, I'll be sure to put a little thing underneath there. But what's really cool about these is that you can replace the antenna with longer ones. And when you're dealing with radios, the antenna actually does make a big difference. Everybody looks at the wattage ratings, as that being the most important, but really a good wattage rating and a crummy antenna isn't going to get you nearly as much performance as a good output wattage and a better antenna. So these actually came with 2 sets of antennas, these little shorter ones and the longer one as well, so that's another cool thing. These radios can also pick up FM radio stations and also NOAA weather frequencies, so that's another thing I like about them. I can keep this in my truck, and if there's a storm going on, something like that, I can easily go over to the NOAA weather radio, which is something that I can't do through my truck's radio. Or if, I break down, the truck radio isn't working, I can switch over to FM. So that's on top of being able to communicate two-way. And they're also not that difficult to use. Like my kid, he can go between the NOAA, the FM, and then, talking to me on it. GMRS radios, they do require a license to use while Society is up and running. Let me get that mess out of the way. But the license, like I've explained before, isn't hard to get. It's just if you can navigate the FCC website, pay $30, you're good to go for 10 years. Another prep that I've gotten a ton of use out of has been my solar generators. Now, once again, to be fair, like with the backpack, I haven't actually had to buy any of these. If you're a prep tuber, then you get emails almost daily from people wanting you to review their stuff. And I just stick with Jackery and EcoFlow because I know they're good. Not saying some of the others aren't, but I know what I'm getting out of these guys, and I really like them. Now, when it comes to solar power options, these are preferable if you're concerned about a longer-term grid-down situation. If you're somebody who's just concerned about running your fridge for 3 days straight after a bad thunderstorm, then, something like a gas generator might be a little bit better for that specific use case. But if you want something more well-rounded for your longer term stuff, this is probably going to be preferable. And I use these actually every day. Like this one, I just pulled it out from under my desk because that's what I use to power my laptop while I'm working. I'm kind of in a weird spot where if I was charging my laptop while I was sitting here, there'd be cords strewn all over the room, which I don't like. So I just keep this down underneath me and plug it right in. I also have a smaller one right now in my son's room powering a little Bluetooth speaker because there's nothing more annoying than that speaker dying at 4:30 in the morning and him waking us up because his music has stopped. So there's a lot of emergency and just everyday uses for these types of things. Then on the smaller end of the spectrum, I really love these Anchor USB battery banks. My family and I, we use these to keep our phones charged while we're away from home. There's one powering my camera right now as we speak. And then also another cool thing about these is that you can hook them up to little miniature portable solar panels and have basically a mini solar generator that you can use to keep your phone, flashlights, and other small electronics charged long term. And I mean, it just fits in a backpack, and that's not something that I could say about my larger solar generators. Then this last one may surprise you a little bit, and that is my lacy or lossy external hard drives. Now, you might be wondering why in the world would this be considered a prep of any sort? Well, maybe you have a ton of PDFs or maps that you'd want to keep digital backups of, put it in a Faraday cage, something like that along with a computer. This would be very, very good for that. Also, if you have important family videos, pictures, things like that. I know a lot of folks are like, I won't care if those are gone. Well, you might after, people have been gone for a few years and you can't remember what their face looks like. I know that's depressing, but I mean, I know how the human mind works. Having some pictures or videos of, people that we don't have anymore, it's always a little bit therapeutic. But what I like about these in particular is that they are extremely durable. I have this one and one other that I use to keep a lot of my media files on, and when I go working different places, I just slide these in my backpack, and they do a very good job of keeping all of that information protected. These are very durable. I mean, you don't want to get too stupid with it. But I've had other manufacturers' hard drives fail on me. Haven't had that with these yet. Not saying that it never happens, because I'm sure somebody has had these fail on them. But if you're looking for a pretty reliable, fairly tough way to store large amounts of information, this is a very good way to do that. Now, if you want to see some cheap household items that everybody should stockpile, then click here. Or if you want to see the items that would vanish first in a crisis, then click here. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.